Georgia River Network, we're so honored that the family of Jimmy Carter, that Jimmy Carter wants to accept an award from us, from Georgia Rivers. So we're just so thrilled, Josh, that you're here. Josh is the fourth grandson of Jimmy Carter. Jimmy gave him his wood shop and just passed on such a wonderful legacy. Josh has a wonderful podcast about being an American and growing up with this wonderful legacy. And I'm just so honored that you're here today. So President Carter, when he was governor, did a lot for rivers and as president, from being the first to go down Bull Sluice in a tandem canoe, which y'all saw, that helped create the Wild and Scenic designation for the Chattooga River, meaning no dams can ever be built there. In 2008, he came to our fish fry, and that's why we're having a fish fry tonight, on the Flint River, because he was against dams that were proposed that everyone else in the government thought were just fine. And later he said, people just cussed me and said horrible things, but then they came up to me years later and said, you know, I really cussed you and said horrible things. But now I'm so happy that you saved this river because it's one of the most beautiful stretches of the Flint. He also was in the White House when the Coastal Marshlands Protection Act was signed into law, and that came about because of mining that was proposed on Little Tybee. Little Tybee would be gone without the Marshlands Protection Act. And so I like to tell legislators, y'all have done this before, you can do it again with an Okefenokee Protection Act. I think we'll see what we can do with the legislature. But thanks to Michael and others, we've got the United States of America that is protecting and pledging to protect the waters of the United States, their federal rights to the National Wildlife Refuge's waters. So we're so happy about that. So there's many more. There's the Chattooga National Recreation Area, the nation's first water trail, and he's responsible for that. And so it's so wonderful to have y'all here today. I'm sure there's others, but again, I'm dying to see Rob Jordan's band play. So Josh, could you please come on up?
So my name is Josh Carter, and I am President Carter's grandson. And thank you. He's going to be 100 in October. And I'm honored to be here at the Georgia River Network Gala to accept the River Hero Award on my grandfather's behalf. And I thought I'd open by telling you about the first time that my grandfather was mad at me. I was 12 years old, and my grandfather had taught me how to tie flies at his fly tying desk in his home office in Plains. And my first flies were the Adams fly and the black ant. And he was excited that I was finally old enough for him to show me his love of fly fishing and being an outdoorsman. He was preparing me to take me up to Spruce Creek in Pennsylvania for my first fly fishing trip. And so he taught me, as soon as he taught me how to mount a hook and spin the bobbin, I stayed at that fly tying desk all weekend. And I filled my tackle box with Adams and ants. Now, Spruce Creek is a stocked trout stream. It is catch and release. So every rainbow in that creek has been caught dozens of times, and they are jaded. They're not going to be fooled by a 12-year-old's first ant. First day, I fished all morning, didn't catch a thing, not a bite. The creek was so clear that I could see the fish actively ignoring every one of my casts. And I couldn't pull anything out of the stream. So I did what my grandfather trained me to do. I studied the fish. I studied the stream. I looked at what they ate, when they ate. And I thought I had a pretty good handle on what they're interested in. So I pulled out my fly tying vise and I went to work. I copied the local menu exactly. That afternoon, I put on my waders and I got back in the creek and I pulled out a fish almost immediately. Papa was downstream. He saw me fighting and he started cheering for me when I caught my first Spruce Creek trout. I landed it, pulled off the hook, reluctantly let it back in the water, and not 10 minutes later, I got another one hooked.
Nice.
I started cheering again, and this time, my grandfather came up to my fishing spot to watch his grandson grow into an outdoorsman. He brought the net, helped me land my fish, and he got a real good look at the fly I tied for the first time. It was a brown cube that looked a lot like the food pellet that came from upstream. He cut off my fly and told me it was unsportsmanlike. So I tied on an Adams and resumed not catching a thing. I cannot overstate how important fishing is to my grandfather. He is irritatingly good at it. When I was in high school, he invited us to his mountain property in Walnut Mountain, which is on Turniptown Creek in Ellijay. Now, I gotten better with my fly tying at this point, and I was trying to interest a brown trout in a new beetle that I had tied. He was across the creek, he was under a low branch, and I kept casting upstream, and my stupid beetle flopped over this fish's head for 30 minutes, no interest, nothing. My grandfather walks up to me, he gets his fly rod, and he throws his fly down that fish's throat. He pops it up and says, "Here, Josh, you want to reel it in?" Big Jimmy Carter smile. I said, "No, it's your fish."
He's got the big Jimmy Carter smile too, doesn't he?
He caught my fish. So a lot has been written about my grandfather's pre-presidential life. A famous peanut farmer turned governor turned president. But there is no origin story about my grandfather's love for the outdoors. It was there from the very beginning. He spent his early childhood in the woods of Plains, Georgia. He returned to the same woods after he left the Navy in 1953, and again when he involuntarily left politics in 1981. So I wasn't there for any of that, though. I was born in 84. He still lives in that same house, in that same small town in South Georgia, and we still own that land. I grew up going down to Plains and walking the same woods and farms that my family has owned for more than 100 years now. So most of my grandfather's hobbies are outdoors. He has a small pond in front of his house that he keeps stocked. But when he really wants to go fishing, he goes to his mother's house, which was 5 minutes away, to a place we in the family call the Pond House. Now, it is on Carter Fish Pond Road. It was about twice as big as the front lawn pond, but when I was in college, he doubled it because, you need a bigger pond. And a few years after that, my grandfather decided that he should provide irrigation for one of our farms. So he spent 4 or 5 years making his third pond, which we now call the new pond. And after that, my grandmother said, "If you build another pond, I'm filing for divorce."
No.
Yeah, she did, but it didn't come to that. The waterways of Georgia feed these ponds, and they are vital to our ecosystem, our economy, our history, and our future. Jimmy Carter knew that when he was governor. He canoed the Flint River, came back to office, and vetoed plans to build 3 dams that would have ruined the river. And then in 1974, he paddled over Bull Sluice. And he went back to the governor's desk, and he vetoed the Chattooga Dam project and labeled the Chattooga as a Wild and Scenic River, which was the first river to receive this national recognition. This designation that Jimmy Carter made 50 years ago started the Wild and Scenic River movement, which today covers 228 rivers in the United States, totaling about 13,500 miles of nationally protected waterways. During his 4 years as president, he was responsible for preserving over 157 million acres of public lands. He doubled the size of the national park system. He protected 16 rivers from destructive water reclamation projects, and he expanded our national parks, our wildlife refuges, our wilderness areas, and yes, he continued to find and designate wild and scenic rivers. He built in the work that Teddy Roosevelt started almost 120 years ago, and he cemented his place as one of America's most important conservationists. So we don't have to guess how Jimmy Carter would feel about Georgia's legislative debate on navigable streams. In legislature today, the House Study Committee on Navigable Streams are debating shutting down public access to any Georgia waterway that does not meet the definition of a navigable stream. We've heard about this today already, but for legislative purposes, Georgia defines a navigable stream from a law adopted in the middle of the Civil War to protect waterways for cotton barges and steamboats. But we don't use cotton barges and steamboats to run our state's economy today. The law ignores Georgia's entire modern river recreation economy. This definition ignores the family businesses, the local communities, the tourism, and the recreation destinations all over the state that allow Georgians to enjoy our state's waterways. We know he would protect our communities, our small businesses, our recreation, our environment, and our water. So the Coastal Marshal Protection Act guaranteed Little Tybee Island will forever be protected from destruction by mining. Today, Governor Kemp has the opportunity to protect the Okefenokee Swamp and St. Mary's River from ecological destruction that is inherent in mining by signing the Okefenokee Protection Act. He should invest Georgia's surplus funds into Georgia and buy mining interest in the Okefenokee's Trail Ridge. And he should deny the Twin Pines mining permit. The Okefenokee Swamp is a Georgia treasure. Today, we know for sure just how fragile our ecosystem is. Okefenokee is one of Georgia's most biodiverse hotspots, home to thousands of species. The Okefenokee Swamp is one of Georgia's largest natural water filters, providing clean water to our rivers and our coastal ecosystems. Okefenokee has a proud history of delighting nature enthusiasts, bird watchers, which my grandparents were avid bird watchers, kayakers, and photographers, by providing access to unaltered wilderness. Today, Governor Kemp has the opportunity to continue the tradition of Georgia governors by protecting our delicate wilderness for generations to come, and he should do it.
Yeah. Yes.
He should do it. Now, to be honest with you, I almost showed up here in my scouting uniform. My 11-year-old is a tenderfoot in Troop 268 in Chambly, and I'm a scout leader. We just spent a week of the summer up at Camp Woodruff in Blairsville, Georgia, and my son Charlie spent every spare minute he had in a kayak on Lake Woodruff or on a raft on the Chattooga River. At scout camp, Charlie shot bow and arrows, he shot a rifle, he learned how to start a fire, and he earned his right to carry a knife in his pocket. Now, as an 11-year-old boy myself once, I guarantee that this is an 11-year-old boy's dream. But he told me his favorite thing about scout camp wasn't shooting, it wasn't fire starting, and it wasn't even tenting with his best friend. It was being in a kayak.
Huh. Nice.
Charlie is well on his way of being an outdoorsman himself. We will protect Georgia's rivers and Georgia's streams so that one day in the future, Charlie can stand here on this stage and tell you about the time that his daddy cast his fly rod so aggravatingly that he's still talking about it a quarter century later. That's the dream, anyway. And the work you do here at the Georgia River Network makes this dream a reality. So on behalf of my grandfather, on behalf of my son, I thank you for the work in protecting Georgia's waterways for me, my family, my scouts, and for all of Georgia's future. Thank you for this honor.